Hello, and welcome to the weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and the founder of E equals Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. A team's job is to deliver business results. The role of the leader is to really empower, inspire, and enable the people in the team to deliver those results. And there's really a simple, repeatable formula to drive that success: the E3 leadership code: express plus engage plus execute, powered by emotions. However, each leader's approach to applying that leadership code is unique because there's no one way to lead. And our live sessions are really to aim to showcase these diverse voices of leadership. So, before we get started, please let us know where you're calling in from. Introduce yourself. Feel free to share your LinkedIn contact. And we have a question for you. We're really curious to know what's your function. Are you from RevOps? Are you from sales, marketing, HR? Let us know what function you're involved in, and then ask questions as we go along because we want to answer your questions. This is about you. Okay, so I have been looking forward to this conversation. Today's guest is someone I had the pleasure of working with back in our HP software days, back when we were tackling complex problems, building strong teams, and learning a ton along the way. Roy Carmel is now the CEO and founder of Spotlight.ai, and he's got one of the sharpest minds in the enterprise software. But what I admire most is how he leads with clarity, conviction, and a genuine care for his people. His team hasn't had a single person leave in over 3 years. And in today's world, that's no small thing. So let's dive in. Roy, welcome. So excited to have you here. So for everyone that's tuning in, can you walk us through a bit of your journey? From special ops to HP to startup found up, you've done a lot. How did it all unfold?
All right, great being here, Kathy. Thanks for having me on, and it's amazing to close circles after several years together at HP. Yeah, so my journey is maybe not very standard one. Again, born raised abroad, I did serve in the military in special ops, led teams into battle. And then early in my life got into tech. I started at fairly large companies, company called NDS, that's now Cisco, HP, and really grew through the ranks to understand how to manage complex operations, complex portfolios. Grew through the product organization into strategy, and then at some point I really got fascinated with the other functions that we're trying to serve as product leaders, right? Whether it's functions on the marketing side or on the sales side. And then at some point I decided it's time to go and build at a slightly earlier stage, which we call sometimes growth stage of companies. And so I joined Perfecto Mobile as chief product officer, and later took over marketing as well as CMO as a combined role, and really transformed the product role into a role of alignment in the organization, all the way from R&D to sales. I had the pleasure to work with amazing leaders, both the founders of Perfecto Mobile, Ran Yaniv, Yoram Mizrahi, but also Keith Butler, the CRO. And Keith and I partnered to build the framework, which later we operationalized into the sales organization. And it back then already the seeds of Spotlight AI were planted, because it became pretty evident that we're putting huge amount of energy on building a framework, but even more energy on operationalizing it. And so, based on what we did at Perfecto Mobile, I was asked to go join another company called Cybereason, and build the same type of operations we built at Perfecto at Cybereason. Different vertical in tech, different team, different funding structure, but the fundamental challenges were the same: growing fast, keeping teams focused, and operationalizing what will ultimately create operation excellence in the field. And once we did that, I tried to ask myself, should I do this again? I'm starting to have this playbook, and should I go and do this again? And the one thing I learned about myself is that when I really know how things should be done, I get extremely bored. And so that's when I changed to do things I didn't do, just like I did from HP back to Perfecto. And so the one thing I didn't do was do a 0 to 1. And
Mm.
so I did advise companies on 0 to 1, but decided to do the unrational thing after this career and go build something from scratch, which I simply love. I enjoy every day, and this is what led me to start Spotlight. And Spotlight was created because of the recurring challenges that I saw through my career, either as an advisor or as an executive, for teams that are trying to create operational excellence in sales, but are lacking the understanding of what's blocking them from getting there. And the combination of maturity of AI about 3 years ago, when Spotlight was founded 3.5 years ago, this was the right time to create an AI native company to go and solve that problem. And so what we created is a company, a platform that we define as an autonomous execution platform for sales. We deploy a squad of AI agents for every opportunity. Each agent has a specialty. One agent inspects the opportunity constantly. One agent listens to the interaction between the buyer and the seller. One agent actually generates assets that the rep needs, decks and documents that they need to move the deal forward. And so slowly we're taking over more and more tasks that are, we call them analytical or operational tasks that can be handed off to these squad of AI agents, and leaving the rep to orchestrate this and focus on creating trust with a customer, understanding power structure, putting a strategy together for winning the account. And that's what Spotlight AI does with some of the leading global 100 Cloud 100 brands today, which you can see on our website.
I love it. And, I had the opportunity, you gave me a demo of it. I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing, because what you're really doing is helping the sales teams do what they do best, right? Sell, while
Exactly.
making sure all of the stuff behind the scenes that we're always on everyone's case of, you need to make sure you have, what is the value, what are the outcomes people want, all of that. And you're automating that to make it easier for the reps so they can do what they do best.
Exactly. And as leaders, as sales leaders, we have a strategy and a methodology that we want to drive into the organization. And for some reason, adopting the strategy and the methodology is not always happening. The understanding is there, the adoption is not there. And the reason adoption is not there is because of certain blockers that when you analyze what those blockers are, you see that we're asking reps either to do things that are not helping them immediately. They help them long term, but not on an immediate basis. They don't see the benefit, right? Or we're actually forcing them to do tasks for the sake of leadership and not for the sake of themselves. And so if we flip it and actually create things that are helping the reps move deals forward while creating visibility for management and taking away the human element of opinion and separating evidence from opinion, when we create that visibility, then leadership gets better visibility, reps get autonomous capabilities and can move faster.
I love it. And I mean, Roy, correct me if I'm wrong. This goes back to almost what we were doing in HP when we called it Moneyball at the time, right? Breaking down the silos between all of the teams that it requires to bring a product to market, to the customer, close the deal, and continue to deliver value on it.
Right, and I think you and I spoke about this. We had George Kadifa as the leader of HP Software back then, and what George did, which I still remember to this day, he brought a 10,000 people organization into a week of execution together, and by the end of the week, 10,000 people were aligned on what's going to happen in the next 12 months, which was really an unbelievable operation, which you ran from an ops perspective with George. And I took from that the importance of alignment and how how to harness people into that alignment. And literally, when I look at the type of alignment we created in the different companies I worked at, I had that in the back of my head of how important it is to walk out of this week when everybody understands. The team in R&D at Perfecto, we had a team in R&D that named themselves based on a differentiator name that the sales actually used in the field. And so we really created that level of alignment.
Yeah. And I love to always bring things back to the E3 leadership code. That's expressing the purpose. Why are we here? What are we doing? How do we do it? Because that's how you get alignment. Because everyone's marching to the same drum then, and it's not silos working on their own task. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build a business and grow a business and deliver outcomes, right?
Yeah, 100%. And in a startup environment, when things are moving at light speed, changing at the maximum speed, and adapting, creating alignment is different than creating it in a corporate environment where you literally have more time. You have more people to align, but you have more time. And so what I find myself is having these conversations with the leadership on a one-to-one. When I do a one-to-one basis, I almost don't spend time on talking about the tasks. I spend time on explaining them what is the process I went through in the last week, right? With my understanding of what I'm seeing, so they can internalize it and then interpret it to what it means for them for the next few days to do their work. Because that's the most important thing I can give them. I'm having all of these conversations with customers, with my co-founders, with different people in the organization. If I can just bring that understanding to that person, that's the best thing I can do for them. And so, like the best example is our marketing leader, right? Marketing always tries to hit on the message. And the message at a startup is constantly adapting. The product changes extremely fast, right? You understand the market at high speed, and you're adapting your message based on what you see. And so instead of doing a messaging workshop with my marketing person, I simply tell her what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking is happening in the market, and where I believe we should be positioned. Now, how do we get there is a secondary discussion. But if we can have that first discussion and get on the same page, that's the best thing I can do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we had spoken before, you were talking about how leadership is really different in a big company versus a small company. And what are some of those things? Like, what's your style and how do you show up? So, obviously, expressing the end vision, telling people what you're thinking. What else? It sounds like you're really involved with the people on your team on a regular basis.
Yeah. So first of all, I think if you don't love motivating people, you can't drive a startup. It's freaking hard every day. It's I got bigger people than me saying it's like getting through glass every day, the whole day, and then once in a while you have a win. So it's really the hardest thing you can do is create something from scratch and drive momentum from zero momentum. And so you need people to believe. And you as a founder, you're there because you believe. But not every person who joins believes. And so it starts really with hiring. And what kind of people do you hire for the founding team that are coming because they believe in your vision, not because they see the short-term success, or because they're getting an optimized payroll, but really because they want to be part of this thing that you're building. And that's the key thing to start with, because if it's not there, it's very hard to get them on a page of let's go through this extremely difficult thing together. The second thing is they still don't know how hard it is if they haven't done it before. So you need to keep internalizing and repeating, this is going to be hard. This is hard. What we're experiencing is what we should be experiencing. And almost like be in the pain with them to say, guys, this is what it means, right? And let me tell you what happened last year. And we got through it. And now we're like in a completely different position. And so you're managing that belief, right, constantly. And so that's the second thing. The third thing, which I think has nothing to do with a startup, but it's like a core thing, that is either it's a 0 or 1 with leadership is trust. People will follow you if they trust you, and they will not follow you if they don't trust you, regardless of what else is happening around you. And so if there's good things happening around you and they don't trust you, it's just a matter of time until they'll leave you. If it's neutral or bad things, they'll leave you immediately. But if they trust you, they'll stay no matter what. And so being very genuine with the people, understanding what do they need, right? Not what you need from them, but what do they need at this point, is creating that trust. And I can tell you, I have very different conversations with people in the company based on what they need personally, not professionally, personally, what they need. Right? Because if you're able to address that and they trust that you have their best interest, and there's personal relationship, genuine relationship there, they'll go the long way.
I love it. So obviously, and I think the number you told me, you've had like zero turnover on this founding team. That is incredible, right? And if you think about it, looking backwards now, right? So you came from the big corporations, and then all the way down to 0 to 1. If you look backwards and what you've learned now on leading this founding organization, how much of the attributes and the traits that you see critical are actually critical in any role, no matter the size of the company?
One of the things that when we deal a lot with MEDPIC as a sales framework, right? At Spotlight, we have zero touch MEDPIC, autonomous execution, and the C in MEDPIC, one of the C's, there's two C's. One of them is champion, and one of the most important things with a champion is, do they have a personal win, and do you understand their personal win? Because if they don't have a personal win, they're not going to put their name on something and go through the difficult task of getting a deal done if it's for another reason. And so they also go through hardship to get the deal done. So you need to make sure you understand the personal win and you explain it to them. It's the same with leadership in a way. In a way, you're leading your champion as a leader, and it's not very different than with people either in corporations or in startups. If you understand what's a personal win and you're able to help them achieve that personal win, then that gets you the right to lead them. And if you're not getting that personal win, you don't have the right to lead them, right? You're basically dictating what they need to do, but you're not leading them. And so, I mean, just think about yourself. All of us, when we were younger, worked for people that we looked up to or didn't look up to. The people we looked up to are the people we believed will help us really achieve what's important for us, right? Better. And so, if you're able to see through the day-to-day tasks and understand, is that person looking to, challenge themselves at the edge of technology? Is that person looking to grow their network? Is that person looking to make a name for themselves in the industry? What is their personal win? And you're able to create a platform for them to achieve it. That's one of the key things. And then they'll also trust you because they'll know you're getting them what they want the most.
Yeah. I mean, trust is absolutely the number one thing. Carrie piped in with, we have a phrase, we call it, what's in it for me, right? So I'm always asking people, what's in it for me when you're talking to people? Like, why do they care? Why are they going to show up? And you mentioned George Khalifa, and it's funny, he had a huge impact on me personally in my leadership style. We're in one of the big meetings where we're trying to break down the silos, and people are coming up with excuses of, couldn't do this, so-and-so wouldn't pick up my phone, etc. And he was just like, no one wakes up with bad intent. And it's something I always believed in, right? Like, everyone assumed positive intent, but what is their motive? Why are they here? What's important to them? So when you can reframe things into what's important to them, that's when you can influence people and really get people on board.
Right. And to be honest, as a leader, you need to sometimes fight for your people to get their personal win. I mean, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's not trivial. I'll give you an example. I had an employee that was a thought leader in the industry, and it was pretty clear that's what gets him up in the morning. Is making a name for himself, excuse me, and basically growing his personal brand as a thought leader, which is amazing for a company to have, right?
Right.
And so we created all of these programs for him to create thought leadership assets and activities and speaker engagements. And then at some point, he started writing a book. And there was a question in the company: should this book be part of the company, or should it be a personal book? And he wanted to write that book and sell it online and drive a business, which and that book was part of what we were doing in that company. And I ended up fighting the company. It wasn't trivial, but fighting for his right to go and create business around this book, and drive it. And it was good for the company. It ended up being amazing for the company, amazing for him. He stayed with the company until the exit. And I think if I wouldn't have, he would have found a way to do this somewhere else. And
Yeah.
so understanding that personal win and being able to create friction if needed to go get it also creates an unbelievable trust, because they see you're fighting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really is when you take care of your people, then they can take care of the mission, right? And you need your team on board with you and helping you. And it is a different leadership style for almost everyone that you're dealing with.
Yep. Yeah, we as leaders, we play chess, not checkers, right? Every person is doing something slightly different, and if you're trying to play checkers, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. So when you look back over your career and all the things that you've done, what have been, some really big lessons learned, or, whether it's a bad leader you've had or a great leader, what's helped influence you?
Yeah, so I mean, we spoke about George Khalifa, and I look to him really as one of the most amazing senior leaders that I interacted with. Um, George, again, led all of HP Software. I think we were about 10,000 people, around 10,000 people, maybe a little bit
Yep,
more.
I think, yep.
Um, and he was able to get into a meeting with people up to 3-4 levels below his reporting position. And if it's relevant, quiet the room and focus on the person that's most relevant to give the answer, regardless of where he is in the organization, and have a deep conversation with that person on that topic, and then bring it back to the rest of the team. And so he literally flattened the organization without changing org structures, and was able to get the right information from the right people and bring it into a strategic decision. And I think what it meant is he's valuing the people, not the title. He's valuing the knowledge and the opinions, not how loud they are. And it became pretty evident that regardless of who you are, if you walk into a room with George Khalifa, he might call on you, and you need to have the answers, right? And so you don't hide as a more junior person. You actually step up, and it elevates everybody in the organization. And when you look at amazing leaders around the world, politicians, leaders that are highly valued, one of the things that repeats itself is people that say, I met this person randomly on a way somewhere, and he stopped and talked to me as if nothing else mattered.
Mm.
And I think people remember that, and it actually elevates them. And that's something that we need to remember. It's very easy to, even as executives, it's very easy to get back into the comfortness of, let's just have the executive conversations. Let's not muddy with all the details. But sometimes the details are important, not just operationally. They're important to get the people to go after the mission. And so that's something I always try to remember. And to be honest, we all need to remind ourselves, because it's not a natural thing to do, and we need to do it unnaturally and make it part of our DNA.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So, do you have intentional actions you take to really reflect and have awareness of how you're showing up, how people want you to show up?
I do. So I ask myself, specifically at Spotlight, I every few days, every few weeks, I reflect back to see how much did I engage with different parts of the organization. I mean, just recently, we had an amazing deal that we worked really hard on, and my whole focus for like 2 weeks was on this deal, and that was the right thing to do. And we got the deal. It's a whole other story. It's worth another podcast episode. Um, but immediately after, I mean, I took 2 days to recover, but immediately after, I sat back and I said, okay, I abandoned these things during those 2 weeks. I'm gonna focus on them, even if there's no specific thing, because I want to make sure we're not shifting, the focus of the company away from people who are doing things that are critical for the company. And so that's what I did this week. This week, I actually spent more time than usual with these parts of the organization that I abandoned during that time. And with a startup, it's short time frame. It's like 2 weeks, 1 week. In larger organizations, it could be a quarter or a month. But but if you don't do this reflection, then you slowly lose those parts. They lose focus. They lose motivation. And that's something it doesn't come natural. You need to stop and think and reflect and then make a decision.
What advice do you have from people? Because I hear oftentimes, and as I'm coaching people, they're always like, I, I have all this stuff I have to get done and all of these deadlines. What would you advise them? That it is still important to stop? There's a phrase I use often: go slow to go fast.
Yeah, there's a few things. So first of all, I always say, if you're working in a company that has like an annual evaluation, nobody is going to tell you you've answered all the emails at the end of the year. You did amazing. You didn't leave any email unanswered. Like we think that what's hitting us should drive our action, but when we fast forward to the end of the year and look back, then it's pretty clear it's not really important. And so, in a way, it's like in life, right? As you get older, you fast forward to the last part of your life, and you're like, how am I going to look back at these things, and what really matters and what doesn't? It's the same in smaller increments. And so, if you're able to zoom out of the day to day, shift to your annual review, if you will, as an employee, and think, when I look back, what's going to really make this year? It's going to become pretty clear that a lot of noise around you doesn't really matter. However, if you don't get these one or two things right, it's going to be a shitty year. And so, but if you get them right, you're going to have a huge win. And so if you're able to focus on that and then communicate, which is the second part, because you're abandoning some things, you're making trade-offs. So communicate that to the right people, saying, hey, I have all these, I'm not able to handle everything, but I'm going to prioritize this and deprioritize that. You're not gonna have answers within a month. It's gonna take probably 2 quarters, or we're not gonna do this. Otherwise, we're not gonna be able to deliver on this more important thing. So if you're able to communicate it as a trade-off based on priority, people understand. But the hard thing is to take yourself out of the situation. And I found that fast forwarding and looking back really helps. The other piece is, try to think about the worst case scenario. And this is, when starting a company, it really helped me. I mean, I had a very comfortable executive roles. I had other offers when I finished my other role. Taking another executive role with a big comp was not difficult to do. And I really wanted to start this company, but it didn't financially make sense from a probability perspective. It was a crazy thing to do. And so I did a worst case scenario. I said, okay, let's assume I fail. Right? Let's imagine the next 3 years, where I get dragged through glass, and I don't make the comp that I can make, and then I fail at the end of 3 years. And, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to learn a lot, but I'm going to fail. Is this still something I can handle? And if the answer is yes, and you really want to do this thing, then go do it. And if the answer is no, I mean, if your family is gonna break, maybe it's not worth it, right? But if you can handle, then it helps you get out of the situation and prioritize what's important. Because when we're in the situation, we don't see the forest, but we're able to fast forward and look back. It helps.
I love that. It's funny. I just read an article on this yesterday because I'm getting ready to go on vacation in 10 days. And it's like that list is piling up. So I fast forwarded to the night before, right? And just say, I'm relaxed, I'm in the bed, ready to go on vacation in the morning. What do I absolutely have to get done? What's the most important thing? What can be pushed off? What can be delegated? How do I make sure my team's set up for success so that I can relax? And I love it because we get caught in this spiral and it just feels horrible. And it's like you want someone to come up and hit you on the forehead and be like, boom, just stop, fast forward and figure it out. So I love it. Absolutely great. And as we're talking, which is always kind of my goal here, is kind of proving the fact that expressing the end vision, right? Helping your team understand what that is, expressing that end vision. You talked a lot about engaging your team, and this has become a new theme coming up a lot more, is telling people what you're thinking, right? It's one thing to think about it and express it, but how you think on a daily basis, how you make decisions really engages your team to then be able to make decisions on their own, right? Like, what would Roy do in this situation? Right. And that's, I'm assuming, what you're trying to empower your people is to make those decisions so you're not required at every step
Right.
of the
So I
process.
think you started the session with there are many styles of leadership, and everybody leads differently. And I think everybody leads differently. The reason for that is because you lead because of who you are, not because of what you do, right? And who you are is different. Every person is different. And so one of the things you need to first do is know who you are, what you're good at and what you're not good at. And because if you don't know, like I know things that I really excel in, I'm different at, and things that I'm not really good at. And if you're able to understand those areas in your personality, in your skill set, then you try to augment yourself with people who can take care of the areas you're weak, but you double down with the people on where you're strong,
Yeah.
right? And that in that area, sharing just how you view things, not what they need to do, but how you view things in the areas you're strong in, right? That usually will go a long way because you're better than most people in those areas, and you actually are bringing yourself to their decision making. And
Yeah.
so I do think those two things are important, because if you try to bring yourself in areas you're weak in, it's not going to generate a lot of trust. But if you're able to actually be open and say, this is not where I should spend my time. I'm gonna hire for this task, or I'm gonna partner for this task. But this is what I know how to do best, and let me tell you how I view things here, right? Then people get on the same page, and and separating that from an operational discussion of what are our goals, what are the KPIs, how do we get there, which is critical. Like, you have to do it, but it's a separate discussion than how I view things.
Yeah. And that's the execution. You need all of the legs of the stool. And then, I mean, just how you've shown up today and what you've shared and the emotional intelligence that you're bringing to the table, that is absolutely critical for your success, right? You are connecting to the hearts of everyone on your team, and that's why they're so inspired.
I think every person basically gets the team around them that resonates with what they bring to the table. So in a way, there's almost no good and bad, but you need to find the people that resonate with what you can bring to the table.
I agree. Well, right, we are at the bottom of the hour. We could talk all day, I think. But tell us what's next for you. What are you excited about? What's happening at Spotlight.ai?
Yeah, so we're at I don't need to tell anybody, we're at a pivotal point of agentic AI. Um, we're basically our minds are blown from what's happening, because we're riding this huge tiger that's taking us forward from a technology perspective. I think what's happening is, and specifically in revenue intelligence, where the category that we're in, is we were one of the first to deploy squads of AI agents to coordinate different tasks. And so we never slapped on a chat interface on top of our app, but we built a unique data model behind the scenes that allow these squad of AIs to tour that model and map it to what's happening between the seller and the buyer. And so think about two people, a seller and a buyer, interacting, and there's this body of knowledge of what needs to happen, and agentic AI agents constantly map what needs to happen to what really happened and collect evidence and make decisions based on that evidence, and then take actions based on those decisions. And those actions could be, create an asset for the rep. Those assets can be send an email or set a meeting, or update the management on raise a flag to management that something is missing, and we're going to hit a wall. And so the result of that is that we're seeing the teams that are using Spotlight AI starting to rely more and more on these autonomous actions that are happening. And I can tell you internally, I mean, we're using our own AI, obviously. I feel very weird finishing a meeting without Spotlight AI behind me, following up on what happened, updating everybody who needs to get updated, and getting the assets ready for me for the next meeting. I mean, I need now to take care of all this. And so it's a little bit like, going back to shift gear in cars, where you now need to listen to the engine and know when to shift gears. For the old people here, I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, we get used to just hand over this responsibility. And I think what's happening is we're going to see responsibility handed over slowly more and more to these agentic AIs. I always say, as long as there's a person buying on the other end, there's a critical role for the seller to orchestrate this as a person, right? But that person should move into a strategy orchestration role, and not, be a busy worker doing things that they can hand off to agentic AI. Maybe one day, maybe there's not going to be a buyer on the other end, and then our conversation will change. I actually think we will get to that point at some point, but it's not too close in the future.
That's a whole nother chat. But I agree. I mean, I think what this really does is allow to focus on the value, right? Bringing value to your clients, and when we talk about leadership, the same thing. We need to focus on value, the customer, the people, the individuals. And what you're able to do with your tool is just allow that value to show up quicker, so that the sales reps are not spending their time doing administrative work, which, as we
100%.
both know, don't want to be doing.
And we make it impossible for them to ignore if there's no value in the interaction. So we push them towards the mandatory value creation during the selling process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Roy, thank you so much for joining us. Very inspirational. You've really shared a lot of great nuggets of how to engage your team, keep them inspired, motivated, to be able to drive zero attrition in 3 years. That's the sign of a true leader. So thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best, and hope we will have you back on the show again in the future, because I think we have a lot to talk about.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks all for joining us. Please follow us at e=y.com. You can also check out spotlight.ai, and hope you all have a great weekend. Take care.